Mhm.
So, Karen, do you think we should just start?
In a moment, because PowerPoint has completely crashed on my computer. So,
Okay, you just let me know.
I'm going to restart the computer
Okay.
because I set everything up, but I could just click and press when I got here, and it's just like I spent a long time trying to make it work. So,
Just let me know when you're
yeah,
ready, and I will come here and just
I'm just going to
start with a
turn it
prayer
off.
and
Yeah,
just.
turn it off and on again and hope. Apologies, my computer just crashed PowerPoint, and so I can't open anything. And I can wing it from here, but it's helpful if I can see it on the screen. So I'm just restarting the computer, hoping it will sort itself out. So in the meantime, um, we can pray. Hang on a minute, let me just see if it's gonna. I'll just pray that it works this time. Oh, brilliant. Finally got it working. Let's pray. Am I just being translated from the back? Oh, okay. Father God, we thank you for your loving way you parent us. We thank you that as we reflect on your love for us, you can inspire us how to show your love to our children as we parent them with love. As you have set clear boundaries for us in love, help us to understand our children's behavior and how to be compassionate towards them and set loving boundaries to guide their lives. Pray for each person here and all that they do to inspire and care and love their children. And may they grow closer to you and their children too. In Jesus' name, amen. So this morning I'm talking about discipline, but I'm going to talk about loving limits, because parenting discipline needs love, but children also need limits. And how do we do both? And it's helpful to go back to the beginning and think about the goals of Christian parenting, which are to raise children who have an active experience of God's love and forgiveness. We want children to grow up with characters like God, and we want them to understand forgiveness. We want them to be kind and loving to others. And this is actually more important than children who will just obey instantly, because when we create children who will obey us instantly, we create children who are vulnerable to abuse. Because when someone else comes and says, do this, they will do it without thinking, because that's what they've been programmed. And ultimately, they have to learn to live their own lives lovingly with others, and we do that best by modeling this when they're young. So I want you to think about God's love and patient discipline in your life. How has God parented you? Think about the mistakes you've made in your life, your struggles, and how God has been so patient with you, working with you over the years. And when we look at 1 Corinthians 13, the first characteristic there is patience. Now, if I wasn't thinking, I would just say, actually, kindness is more important. But in order to be truly kind, you also have to be truly patient and take the time to listen, learn, and understand the situation in front of you. So when we reflect on how God has lovingly parented us, it helps us to think, how do I parent my children? You know, God is incredibly patient with Abraham. He keeps making the same mistakes. He works with him over decades. He's incredibly patient with Jacob and Moses and all of the people, the leaders in the Old Testament. They all made mistakes. But God gently, slowly worked with them. He didn't rush them into instant obedience. He just said, okay, we'll leave it a few years and then we'll come back and we'll help you understand, Abraham, that Sarah is to be the mother of your son, Isaac. And eventually they get there. And also, how can Jesus be our model of example of a model parent, rather than look at the imperfect models of human parenting that we might have got from our parents and other people around us as we grow up? Because none of us have perfect parents, and none of us will be perfect parents. But God can help us be a good enough parent, and when we put him first. So how has God parented us? And we look at 1 Corinthians 13 here. We see love is patient first, and then kind. It doesn't envy, it's not proud. It doesn't dishonor others. It doesn't use shame, so we don't shame our children. It is not self-seeking, just wanting children to fulfill your needs rather than you thinking about theirs. It is not easily angered, and it keeps no record of wrongs. It doesn't delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth, protects, trusts, hopes, and perseveres always. Love never fails. So when we want to think about parenting and parenting well, this is a very high ideal. This is a description of God's love for us. But still, how can that help us think what are our values as parents? How do we parent well and not just go for a quick discipline, you must obey me instantly, but nurture their character over time and develop the love in them? I think it's really cool to remember that we actually co-parent God's child with him. Wow. Our child is God's child, entrusted to us, and we are co-parents in this process. That's awesome that he entrusts us with children, even though we're broken and we make mistakes. He says, I'm going to let you look after my child, and I'm going to help you do it if you watch what I do. So there's different styles of parenting, and the one in the top left quadrant, as you're looking at it, talks about authoritarian parent. This is parenting when it's very structured, there are very clear rules, but the relationship is not close. So it's distant. So, and this actually, when you have rules without relationships, you create angry, lonely children. They might obey you, but they build up resentment and rebellion because they don't feel your love. They need to feel the love. Then we have unstructured parenting, no real rules and not much relationship. That creates neglect. And those children are very sad and lonely. They become quite depressed as children. Then we have unstructured parenting with warm and close relationships. So the parents are very loving, but they let the children choose what's going to happen in the day, what they're going to eat, what we're going to wear, what we're going to do. They give the children actually too much control in the family. And these children, they know they're loved, but they're confused because we give them more control and power than is good for them, and it's confusing. And then the best parenting style is the way God parents us. He gives us some rules, 10, not too many. He knows we can't think about everything. And he loves us. And he says, these are my rules. If you follow these rules, everyone will be safe and happy. And I love you. So I'm going to help you with this. And that's the best kind of parenting, is when there's some structure, a few rules that are understood, and it's warm and close, and we feel loved. Ellen White says this, and I love these words. If they would gather the children close to them and show that they love them, and would manifest an interest in all their efforts, even in their sports and their hobbies, sometimes even being a child amongst them, they would make the children very happy and would gain their love and win their confidence. And the children would more quickly learn to respect and love the authority of their parents and teachers. That's amazing. Ellen White says the heart of discipline is love, winning their affection, letting them know that we're there for them in whatever they're going through, playing with them, enjoying life with them, and bonding with them. And then they gain confidence in us. And then when we say, this is what we need to do, this is how to behave, they will listen more because they know they're loved. And I think this is so beautiful. So God gently leads parents. When I had small children and I felt quite overwhelmed at times, because I was actually ill while I had 3 small children too, and it was quite hard work. This really helped me, this verse. He will feed his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms and carry them in his bosom and gently lead those who are with young. And I thought that's so beautiful to me because it told me God is my shepherd. He is gently leading me when I have children. He's not expecting me to do anything else other than lead my children, because this is the most important work, that we lead our children well. It's the most important thing we do on this planet, is create a healthy, loving generation with good characters and compassion and a faith in God. And he carries our children. He carries our little ones close to his heart as we parent them. And that is so comforting for me, that God is looking after my little ones with me, and he's gently leading me. So kindness is the key. This is another thing Ellen White says. Let parents be sparing of censure. Don't let them tell off too much. Let kindness be the law of the home and the school. Let children be taught to keep the law of the Lord, and let a firm, loving influence restrain them from evil. So when kindness is at the heart, then it's easier for children to obey. And we know this now. I mean, what Ellen White was saying then, really the science behind this is just being discovered. That the more loved a child feels, if you were here yesterday, I shared like this compassion cycle that shows that the more loved we feel, then the safer we feel, the happier we feel, the easier it is for us to listen, to obey, to care. And as they care, it helps us, it gives us joy, and we care for them, and it creates a positive spiral of love, when love becomes the primary motivator for what we're doing. And then she says this, fathers and mothers, you are to represent God's disposition. You are to require obedience, but not with a storm of words, in a kind and loving manner. You are to be so full of compassion that your children will be drawn to you, and the law of God in the home life and in the government of nations flows from a heart of infinite love. This is why we talk about loving limits. And this is the distress cycle that we saw yesterday. At the top it says we don't feel cared for by love and others. It's a bit dark on this screen. But when we are stressed, when children are stressed, because they don't feel our love, or they feel too many rules or too much yelling, then they become stressed. And when they're stressed, they can't listen to us. And it's really hard for them to manage their behavior. And then they might lose control, behave badly, and then we may come and chastise them and tell them off, and they feel more stress, and it's even harder for them to behave well. So we need to realize that when we yell at our children, when we stress them, when we put too much pressure on them because perhaps we haven't managed our own lives well, then the children will become more stressed and less able to manage their behavior well. All of us are like this. When we're stressed, when we've experienced trauma, when we are ill or different things, too much is happening, it's much harder for us to behave well because we're overwhelmed with stress hormones. But actually, when we feel loved at the top and cared for, then the positive hormones get released in the child. They can listen, show empathy, that they can manage their behavior better, care for others better, be kinder kids, and this cycle goes well. So we need to think, where am I on these cycles? How can my compassion calm my child down into a place where they're in this and I can help them behave well? Because too often we haven't realized how we've made it harder for children to obey when we are harsh or yelling at them or in a hurry or we're not patient. So there's a happy principle to remember. And this, if you take nothing else away, this is useful. We don't help children behave better by making them feel worse. The more happy and loved they feel, the happier and more loving they will behave. So we can never help someone behave better by making them feel worse, because it's hard for their brain to then respond appropriately. So let's help our kids. So the more caring connections we make with our child, the easier it will be for them to behave well. And you may recognize this from yesterday's presentation in the Sabbath school time, that when we meet their love needs, these comfort, acceptance when they make a mistake, affection, appreciation for what they do and the efforts they make, when we give them focused attention, speak to them respectfully, encourage them, help them to be safe and valued and supported, it's so much easier for them to behave well. So we use these principles in our parenting with our children, and I can tell you, when we were doing this well, we barely had to discipline them, because we made it easier for their brains to respond appropriately. And you might think, whoa, that's a lot. But really, if they're sad, comfort them, give them a hug, tell them when they've messed up, we love you anyway, let's clear this up together, rather than yelling at them. We love you, thank you for doing this, giving them a few minutes of attention with their homework or a book or what they enjoy doing, speaking to them respectfully, encouraging them when they're struggling a bit, helping them feel safe and loved and supported. Doesn't actually take very long. Small moments, small conversations. You don't have to do everything every day, but when you do, it helps. But the more often we do those things, the easier it is for our children to respond well. But if we do things on this side, we use rejection, that's even time out. I'm not I don't appreciate time out. I think it's not helpful for children. It needs to be done well for it to be effective. If we abuse them, criticize them, put them down, ignore them, shame them, make them feel afraid, etc., we're going to contribute to making it harder for them to behave well, and then we get into a cycle of unhealthy management of their behavior. So when babies' needs, all these different needs, are not met, then they experience neglect, pain, and distress. which leads to unhealthy thinking. So when a baby's needs are not met, they start to think inside, what's wrong with me? Maybe if I try harder, they will love me. And then this leads to negative emotions. They feel like they're not good enough somehow, or they're distressed because of the way we respond to them. Or they can feel bitter or hurt or sad or lonely. When we discipline them and they do not understand why, because sometimes they have no idea why, they don't understand what we're asking them to do, they become bitter because they can't make sense of why we're telling them off. And this leads to negative emotions, unhealthy behaviors, addictions, manipulation, bullying others, perfectionism, eating disorders. And like I said yesterday, when babies and children are sad, including boys, they need to be well comforted by us. We need to help them calm down and comfort them, because that actually helps their body eventually learn to regulate their emotions, to be soothed and calmer and more empathic to others. So we're shaping their brains when we comfort them and respond to them and meet their needs. And if we don't meet their needs well, they have poorer long-term outcomes. But when we do meet their needs well, we see that, and they have love, touch, time, attention, they have healthy thoughts. Wow, I am loved, I am special, I can do it, I'm encouraged. And this makes them feel confident, safe, loving, and leads to healthy behaviors. Because again, when they feel well, they know they're loved, it's so much easier to obey. And that helps them to live more positive lives and relationships. So modeling love when they're young is shaping a brain that can love God and others well. So that's what we're doing, that's the goal. So loving and connected relationships help children's brains to develop love and empathy, and abuse and disconnection shapes their brains for aggression and violence. They looked at the parenting styles of men who were in prison, how they were parented when they were a child, and they could see the effect of the parenting where they weren't comforted and weren't loved or were abandoned or rejected or had a lot of abuse. They were much more likely to be aggressive and violent towards others. And they have also taken brain scans of children, about 3, and they can see that those that have not received comfort and love and care up to the age of 3, when the child gets to 3, the brain prunes out the areas that were not useful. It doesn't know what should be useful. It just says that bit wasn't used. We need to be economical. We're going to bypass it. And you can see on the brain scans of 3-year-olds that were brought up with abuse, harsh discipline, lack of comforting, there are holes, black holes in their brain where there should be empathy. And that's really hard to fix, so hard to fix. You actually have to teach them how to care for others because it's not natural in their brain. So we need to be aware of that now. We didn't always know that. So child's behavior is communication. Everything they do, they're communicating something to us. And sometimes when they're distressed, they're trying to tell us something. They're not being naughty. They're just like, you're the grown-up, I'm dependent on you, I'm expecting you to do this, I'm hungry, I'm uncomfortable, I'm overwhelmed, I'm confused, do something. Because I can't, they're a baby, right? And so often we take children, little ones, we don't tell them where we're going. We just go somewhere, we take them with us into a strange situation. They have no idea what it means, how to behave, what the expectations are. We know, and we just bring them with us, but it can be really bewildering for the child. Even coming into church until they learn how to do that. It can be bewildering. It's a new, strange context, and they have to understand it. Sometimes we need to just tell younger children, 2 or 3 who can understand, this is where we're going, this is what will happen, this is what the expectations are, this is what we are to do, so they have an idea where we're going. Because if someone just picked you up and took you to a strange place and dropped you in an alien context, you would find that pretty scary. Like, what do I do? What am I supposed to do here? And that's what the child feels. So check your child's physical needs. Are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Are they tired? Are they unwell? Do they need comforting and soothing? Because quite often, this is what's going on. The child needs something to eat, often more often than we think. And children can't function on 2 meals a day. They often need feeding more often than we would because their stomachs are so tiny and they're very energetic. Are they thirsty? Are they tired? Because if they're struggling with those things, it's so much harder for them to behave well. And that's our responsibility. So if a child is hungry or tired and they misbehave because they just can't manage their behavior when they feel that bad, and we tell them off, they're very confused because you haven't taken care of their needs, and it's not their fault that they're struggling. It's our responsibility. Sometimes their senses are overloaded. So some children today have high sensitivity, or they may have some level of autism, and they may be super aware of their environment. One of the worst places you can take a child is into a supermarket or a shopping mall because there's too much going on. It's highly stimulating. People are moving around. They don't understand the context. They're with you. If you put a baby in a trolley and you go to the supermarket and they're facing you and you don't give them eye contact, that is really stressful for them. And they're more likely to have a tantrum in the supermarket because they're expecting your eye contact. And when you're looking over here and you're not giving them eye contact, then they struggle with that. So you need to give them eye contact and talk to them regularly while you're going around the store. Otherwise, the child will really struggle. They don't understand, particularly little ones, why you're not looking at them when they're in front of them. They're in front of you. So they're not being naughty when they struggle to be in a supermarket and have a tantrum. They're just so overwhelmed by the sensory information that they can't take it anymore. And they may throw a tantrum that's not a naughty tantrum. They're just telling you, I can't handle this anymore. It's more than my emotions, my sensory overload is so high I can't function. And they need a quiet space to calm down. They might also say, I want a chocolate bar, I want this, and make this huge demand. But what they really want, what they're really asking underneath is, I need to know you care. I need to know I'm important to you, because for the last hour you've been going around this shop, not giving me eye contact, and I've been trying to get your attention because you're close to me, but you're not giving me contact, and that's really troubling for them. So we need to understand and think, what's going on here? Are they just so overwhelmed by this situation that they can't handle it? I identify with this because when I got ill and I had small children, going to the supermarket was the hardest thing for me. And I experienced a sensory overload. And it was really, really hard for me to go shopping with the children. And in those days, you couldn't get your groceries delivered. So because I experienced this as an adult, and I can't lay on the floor and have a tantrum in Tesco or wherever, I just used to have to leave my trolley and walk out and calm down and come back and get it later. And sometimes have to do my shopping all over again because they dismantle my trolley. So I know what that feels like as an adult, and I'm more empathic with the children now. So when a child has a tantrum, you need to understand what's going on. What is the communication? Is it sensory overload? Is it that they really are desperate for your attention? You haven't given them much attention, and they can't cope with that anymore. They feel that you're disconnected from them. And when they feel disconnected from us, they don't know that connection will be made again. And that's very frightening. It's like being emotionally abandoned. So sometimes that leads to a tantrum. Sometimes they have a tantrum because they want something and they can't communicate with you. They don't have the words or means to tell you, I'm hungry, I'm tired, and they would just have a meltdown. So often they're frustrated, they have fear, fatigue, and other powerful feelings, and they just lose their ability to manage. The tantrums, those need comfort, soothing, calming, just holding them, even if they're fighting, just hold them, say, I'm here, I love you, you're safe with me. Sit on the floor and hold them, against your chest like this so they can't hurt you too much if they're thrashing around. The tantrums that we have to manage well are trying to control you and get what they want. That's the tantrum that needs the firm hand. And my daughter manages these really well when her children were younger and had some tantrums. And she would say to them, I can't help you when you talk to me in that voice. So I will listen to you when you can talk to me with your, she would say, big boy voice or big girl voice. So when you're ready to talk to me, I will listen to you, but let's calm down first. And then they might say, I want this. And she would say, I know it's really difficult when you want something and you can't have it straight away, but this is how it is now. This is something we cannot have right now, and I'm sorry, but I am here to help you with your big emotions. I'm here to comfort you. And so she would be very clear, you're not getting this. We can't have this now, but I'm here to help you until you feel better. So making a request. So often we ask children to do things and they don't hear it. Because if they're playing, they're focused on their toys, and they might not know that we're speaking to them. They're so engrossed. So if you want a child to do something, go to them, smile, get their full eye contact, attention, and tap them, look at them, and smile. Because when you smile, then they relax. If your face looks stern and stressed, they panic, they think, what's coming? So smile, make eye contact, tell them calmly and simply what you need them to do. Because children find shouting painful and hurtful. And some will say, we would rather be hit than shouted at, because it's so painful for them. And check that they understand what you've asked them to do. So, hey, we need to go out in a few minutes. It's time to put your shoes on. Let's go and find your shoes. Be very simple, one thing at a time. So what do we have to do? We have to go and find the shoes. Okay, let's go and find the shoes. It's really important to check that they understand what you've asked them, because if they don't, they will go and do something wrong, and you will just think they're being naughty, but they haven't understood what they needed to do. Encourage them with your tone and smile. Show confidence that they're going to do this. Hey, so let's go and find your shoes. Let's do it together. That helps. So support, encourage them. If on the way to the shoes they see a ball and they go off in a different direction, hey, what are we doing? We're looking for the shoes. Okay, let's go and find the shoes. And give them one small thing to do at a time. If you tell small children, go and find your shoes and get your coat and this other thing, then they will not remember. They'll probably remember the first thing. They might remember the last thing. They will almost never remember the middle thing. So give them one thing at a time. And then when they do it well, say, hey, that's great. Thank you. We found your shoes. We're getting ready to go. This kind of response request may take a bit more time, but it helps the child. It supports them in their good behavior. So I once had an interesting time when my children were young, and I needed to go out to the garage to get some food for lunch. Our freezer was in the garage. There wasn't room in the house. So I said to Nathan, my 4-year-old, please will you watch Joel, who was about 1 year old. Just watch him. They were in the living room together, and while I go to get the food from the freezer. I left for about 2 minutes. When I came back, Joel, the baby, had got like a huge tree like this one, but taller. He'd tipped up the pot. He'd pulled the plant out of the pot. He'd dragged it halfway across the carpet with like dirt and stuff dropping off everywhere. And he sat in the middle of the living room, chewing it like a beaver, like this. He was teething, and he was just chewing this tree in our living room. And so I looked around, and I thought, I'm not going to tell Nathan off. I'm going to hear his side of the story. So I just said, Nathan, what happened? And he said, oh, Mummy, it was so funny. I was watching Joel, and this is what he did. I was like, I told him to watch his little brother. In my mind, that means take care of him, make sure he doesn't do anything silly. In his mind, it was like watching television. So he just sat there and watched it happen. And I just laughed, actually, because I realized I hadn't checked that he understood the command. So it wasn't Joel's fault. It wasn't Nathan's fault. I mean, Nathan's only little anyway. I wasn't expecting Joel to do such a thing. He'd never done it before. But I hadn't checked that he understood the request. It taught me a lesson. So they're still learning. Can they actually do what I expect them to do? See, I'm not even sure really that a 4-year-old knows how to look after a 1-year-old who wants to chew a tree, because he'd not learnt that from me so far. Am I punishing them for not being developed enough to do the task? You know, little children will knock over a glass on the table. They are not being naughty. They're being 2 or 3. They're naturally clumsy. And I grew up with a mother who understood, and she said, I will not tell you off for that. That's not being naughty. That's just an accident. And I really appreciated that, especially now as I realized I didn't see very well as a child. So she was taking care of me in that way too. When children are afraid of punishment, they don't learn very well. And I have some Jewish friends, and they said, we have an interesting perspective on our children's behavior, that up until the age of 12, their behavior is the parent's responsibility. The parent is the one helping them. If they behave in a way that isn't what we're expecting, that's our responsibility. We needed to do something different or tell them something different. Once they get to 12 and they have their bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, that means under the law. Now they're responsible for their behavior. Up until that point, we see it as our responsibility to help them behave well. So keep it simple. My experience that children are easily overwhelmed and limit their choices. So I have grandson now, and when I go to my daughter-in-law and my son's house, their little boy, all of his toys are on one little mat, and they have understood this. Limit their choices. So only put out 10 toys at a time and rotate them, because I have seen children who have a lot of toys out and they don't play with them well. They don't focus their attention. They flit. And you can almost see, I don't know whether this contributes to it, I haven't studied this, but I've seen them almost like ADHD. Like they can't focus clearly on one task because they get distracted by this toy here and this toy here and a bit of this and a bit of that. And they don't play deeply and well with one toy at a time and explore it well. They're distracted all the time. So I would say have less toys is easier to clear up. They can help you clear up if they only have 10 toys, even as small children. Pace your schedule, do less in your life, because often I think we try to do a lot more than we can do sanely with small children, and lead by example. You know, keep things structured and simple, and children can follow it easier. Make it easy for them. Also, children, when children tell a difficult truth about their behavior, when they come and tell you they've broken something or they've done something wrong and they're feeling bad, be gentle with them. Warmly thank them for having the courage to tell the truth. Help them to deal with the problem they created. Because if you tell them off for telling the truth, you teach them to lie. So we need to be really aware of that. So if you punish them harshly, they will lie in the future to get out of difficult situations. When you say, thank you for the courage to be honest, let's go and work on this together, let's solve it together, that helps them to be honest. Also, at a certain age, when my children were little, one of their uncles came to me and said, you really need to be careful because your 3-year-old is a liar. I said, okay, tell me what happened. And he told me. And I realized she wasn't lying. She was telling the truth he expected her to say. She didn't understand what the problem was, and she was making something up to fill the gap. Also, children have a fantasy, and they will say things that are not real because they're in their imagination. So don't punish children for a bit of fantasy or them trying to give an explanation for something because a parent asks them and they don't really know. They will try to, it happened because of this. Or like this uncle was saying, she broke my pen. And so I said, okay, what was happening? Well, she was playing with it and this happened. Okay. She didn't break your pen on purpose. She was playing with it and you gave her a pen that you shouldn't really give to a 3-year-old, you know? So she was not intentionally breaking it. So when she said, I didn't break it, it's because that wasn't her intention. And so it's understanding what they mean by what they say. So the problem with physical punishment is that in the past, this was often a means of punishment. We would spank or hit or hurt a child to try and help them to do well. And this isn't helpful because it creates fear, and perfect love casts out fear. When we hit children to make them do the right thing, it teaches them that I can hit someone else if they don't do what I want. And that kind of thinking sets a pattern for future abuse and violence. Because if I can hit my child because they didn't do exactly what I wanted, they can hit someone who doesn't do exactly what they want. When we hit children too, it builds anger, resentment, and rebellion in their heart. And I've counseled many people who've been harshly disciplined as children, and there is so much pain and anger and resentment, and they feel like that's how God is as well. So when we do these things, it gives them an unhealthy picture of God. And it doesn't on its own teach children positive behavior or self-control. It just makes them feel afraid. And it distorts a child's picture of God, which for me is really challenging to fix afterwards. Now, we've really misunderstood some of this because people will say, in English we have this phrase, if you spare the rod and spoil the child. But shepherds do not use rods to hit their sheep, because if a shepherd hits sheep with a rod, the sheep is frightened of him and then he is going to run away. He's no longer controllable. So shepherds didn't use the rod to hit sheep. They used the rod to create boundaries, actually, to guide them in the right direction. They would hold the rod like this, and so the flock would go in the right way, or prevent them from falling over a cliff, or fighting off a wild animal. So it's not about hitting them. It says use it to guide them. Make sure your kids have guidance, not physical punishment. And when we read Psalm 23, what does the shepherd's rod do? Through the valley of the shadow of death, it guides, comforts, keeps safe, sets safe boundaries. How is the shepherd's rod comforting in the valley of the shadow of death if it's an instrument of pain and hitting? That's not. So the biggest thing about helping children with their behavior is helping them to feel loved and safe in their relationship with you and happy. Because when they feel that, then we help them. It's so much easier for them to behave well. But we also need to set clear boundaries, because if they don't have clear boundaries, they don't know what we also expect of them. So when we choose a boundary with children, we should choose very simple boundaries. Don't make them too complicated, and choose one at a time to work on. So show what it looks like, demonstrate it. Don't just tell them, this is the boundary, this is what it looks like, this is what you do, this is why it is important, and check they understand. So, for example, this line is here because, say I take Joel, who's several years younger than Nathan, to Nathan's football game. Nathan's doing football practice in the park, and I take Joel with me with a ball to the park while his brother's playing football. And I will say to Joel, see this white line here? This is the edge of the football game. And we stay a long way away from that edge, because if we go over it and we're in the middle of the game, we're going to get hurt, or people will be cross with us because we will spoil their game. So we stay a long way away. And then I say to Joel, so tell me what this means. What does this line mean? It means it's the edge of the game and we must stay away. Yes, we stay away well over here. Why is it important? Because, you're asking why it's important, because I don't want to spoil the game, I don't want to get hurt. Okay, good. You understand the boundary and why it's there. And then the next step is to make it easy to stay within the boundary. So the easier we make it, then we help them choose good behavior and learn well. So what I will say is, okay, Joel, what we're going to do is we're going to play way over here, a long way away from that boundary line. So let's go way over here and play with your ball. And enforce it warmly, gently, and consistently. So Joel, being Joel, he will play with his ball, and slowly, he's looking at me, and he and the ball get nearer and nearer to the boundary line. And I'll say, Joel, come back here. Let's come and play with the ball here so that we stay safe. Remember, this line is important. And then when they're staying on the right side of the line, play with them, give them positive attention. Yes, that's great. We're staying well away. That's really good, Joel. You're doing well. So that helps to strengthen their understanding of it. And so we help them. But there's going to be a time, Joel being Joel, where he will maybe accidentally, run over that line. Maybe his ball rolls that way and he just runs after it and forgets. Or maybe I notice he's doing it on purpose. He's looking at me and he's like getting nearer and nearer because he wants to check out still how important this is. So we have to differentiate whether Joel accidentally went over the line because he was just running after his ball and he forgot, or whether it's an act of intentional defiance and rebellion. If it's an accident, then treat it as an accident. Say, oh no, Joel, we forgot. Let's come back here. If he did it intentionally, that's when we have to set an important boundary. So I would say if he crossed it intentionally, Joel, I'm sorry. We cannot come and play football when Nathan is playing football until you learn to manage this boundary. So we won't be coming for a few weeks now. You won't be able to come to the park with me when I bring Nathan, and we'll have to practice boundaries somewhere else until you're ready to come back here, so that they learn. And we treat it differently than an accident, because if we punish them for an accident, it's very confusing for a child because they didn't do it on purpose, and they struggle with that. So connect before you redirect or correct. So an important principle in discipline is connect first. Let them know before you do anything else that they are loved, that this relationship is safe, because if they know they've done something wrong and you're angry at them and they feel, and we reject them for a while, they find that very scary, because it's like they don't know that we will connect with them again. And we know we will. That's not a problem to us, but in their minds, they're not sure. So it's very important before you tell them off to connect with them and say, hey, Joel, look, I really love you, and I'm really glad we can come and play here, but this time, this boundary was crossed in a way that was dangerous, and so this is what we're going to have to do next. And stay relationally and warmly connected through the process. It's hard. You know, as parents, when children behave badly, it often presses all of our buttons, and we have a hard time managing our emotions. But if you made a mistake and hurt your child, apologize, because it will teach them how to apologize in the future. They will not learn to apologize and say sorry unless we model that to them. And we can be humble and model that. That's a good thing to teach them. They won't take advantage of the fact that we made a mistake. They will admire you, that you're willing to be humble and ask for forgiveness. So they need to know which boundary was broken and why it's important to make sure it doesn't happen again. And then quickly show warmth and love and acceptance. And I would say time in is much better than time out. So time out, the child can feel abandoned and unloved. My husband has a story. When he was 9 years old, his mother gave him a time out to go to his room and miss his supper. And he was so distressed, he wanted to commit suicide. He was only 9. He was the eldest of 5 kids, and he thought, if I die now, my mum will learn not to treat the others like this. That was his thinking as a 9-year-old, being told, go to your room without your supper. So time in is much better than time out. Say, okay, we made a mistake. I still love you. Let's come here and have a hug. Let me spend some time with you and make sure that you feel loved and safe again, so that they don't feel overwhelmed by their distress. They know they're forgiven. That's what God does for us. You make a mistake and he says, come here, I still love you. I put your sin as far away that no one can ever see it again. My love is constant for you. I'm here for you. So pray for wisdom to respond well, because it's not easy at times. Sometimes they do things and we think, what on earth are we going to do now? How do we manage this situation? But God can help us in his love to find ways. Find a good time to talk calmly and privately about what went wrong. Try not to talk about one child's misbehavior with them in front of the other children, because that's shaming, and they will start to tease each other, and the one who you're talking to will feel embarrassed and angry and frustrated. Don't ask children, why did that happen? They don't know. They have no idea why. Ask what happened. Tell me what happened, and they can tell you the facts. So that's the most important thing. And then natural and logical consequences. So the discipline is connected to the wrongdoing. So because the football, he went over into the football game, the discipline is we're not going to come and play football with Nathan until he's learned that boundary. If they break a window, the natural consequence is they somehow help to fix it by giving a little bit of their pocket money or helping out in some way. And it's really helpful for them to put things right, because when they're part of putting things right, it restores their sense of self-respect as well, and helps them to realize the consequences of their actions. Putting the wrong thing right is important. Or if they've hurt someone, hurt their brother or sibling, get them to do something nice for them instead. So these are important things to think about a logical discipline, not just taking their phone or iPad away. They say that's actually really not a good thing to do, because they're sort of bonded with these things and it's quite painful. Try and find another thing, another way of disciplining them. Limit their use on their device if that's been the transgression. If they've taken a cookie before dinner, they don't get a cookie after dinner. But it must be linked to make sense to them, because that's life. If you speed on the motorway, you'll get fined and you won't be able to drive anymore. If you don't pay your rent, you get kicked out of the flat. So in life, consequences, and with God, are logical consequences of our behavior. So it's helpful if we parent in that way too. Sometimes it's difficult. So catch them doing something right. Philippians 4:8. It's children are helped when we spot them doing something well and we say, that was so kind. And we'll learn more about that in the next session about building character. You did that really well. You played wonderfully with your brother for 10 minutes. Choose a book and I'll read to you. And that really helps them. So I was going to tell you a story as well there about something. I can't remember what it was now. But it's really important that we help them with their good behavior and choose logical consequences for what they've done wrong. Oh yes, what I was going to say is that we actually, when our children got to teenage years, and I maybe talk about this in the teenage brain one too, we said to them, what rules do you think we should have for you as teenagers? We asked them to set the rules. And they made 3 rules for teenagers. One was about staying out late. There was a couple of other ones, I forget what they are. And they set the rules. And they said, okay, good, you set the rules. So you will also set the consequences if one of you breaks it. So one of them stayed out late one night. They broke the rule. And when they came home, the other 2 said, what are we going to do? What punishment should we give our brother for staying out late? So we were like, they were doing it for each other. It was quite helpful. And the 2 of them said, we think he shouldn't go out late. He shouldn't go out now for 2 weeks. He should be grounded, as we say in the UK, for 2 weeks. And so we said to them, do you know what? I think that's a bit harsh. Let's just make it 1 week. So they were like, the child who'd done this, they was like, that's wonderful. But it was really helpful for them to set the rules and to help each other think about what are the consequences. And then we could come in and be a little bit more generous. And so that helped us manage their behaviors as teenagers. Although I have to say, we didn't have to do very much of that because we found the more that we were pouring into their love and their emotional well-being, the less they behaved in ways we didn't like. So, this is my prayer for you, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge about discipline and depth of insight into your child's needs, so that you can discern what is best and make wise choices with your children, so that you and they can be pure and blameless on the day of Christ, filled with righteousness that comes from Jesus. And this is our prayer for all of us. There are some helpful websites up on here. I contributed to the Hands on Scotland one that has some good ideas, an ABC of children's challenging behaviour and what you can do. The WAVE network is the research about brains and violence and children. Young Minds is children's mental health. And then we have some free resources on my website. Here is a book that I also wrote, an Adventist book available from Autumn House. And it's called 52 Ways to Parent Happy Children. And it has very short chapters, mostly for like younger children, so you start off, but it has simple tips that can help lots of parents with bullet points and short things, because parents are busy and they're not going to read a great big book. So this is the book, and what next? So I wonder what you're taking away from here as parents, that you think, oh, that's a really good idea. I'm going to do that in my household, and how am I going to change the way I discipline my kids? So I hope you've learned something from that. If you have questions, come and talk to me in the chat in the break. This is a lightning tour of discipline, but I find that the more we understand how to love our children and set clear boundaries, support them to keep them, and think, how can I support my child to behave well, then that really helps us as parents to bless our children and bring them up with good values and guidelines. Okay, thank you. to any emails I get today. So now we're going to talk about character, and I learned about this in an unusual context. I was working for children's mental health in Scotland, and they came to me and said, can you create a day-long seminar to help parents develop their children's character? I was like, what? I thought only churches talked about that. And they gave me a book, and they said, base it on this book. And I read the book, and as I started to read, after a little while, the author said her father was in Christian education. I thought, I think she's a Christian. And then a few pages later, I realized that she was a Christian, and she developed this way to nurture children's character, and she was experimenting with it in a church school. And I was so excited by having like a roadmap for developing character in children, because as Adventists, we hear this is important, but no one tells us how to do it. And actually, it's really beautiful and exciting, and I love to share this with you. So let's pray. Father God, we want to thank you for your incredible character that is so beautiful. It's more than we can comprehend, and there are so many ways you love us that we don't have words for. And one day, we will discover the words for all the different ways you love us, all your different characters. In the meantime, guide us as we grow our own characters and nurture the character of our children, we pray. Amen. So, when we strengthen characters, we build resilience. And I wonder about you. If your best friend was to describe you, what character strengths would they list? Because you'd probably be a bit shy. And you would say, oh, yes, I'm kind of patient, but not at this time, so I'm probably not that patient. That's the kind of conversation you would have. But your best friend who knows you, they would say, oh, yes, you're really good at this. Oh, you're so kind, and you're really courageous, and you're so patient. So which character strengths would your friend tell you you had? And which character strengths do you think are your strongest? What are you best at in your character? What describes you? Which ones are you intentionally growing? How are you trying to be more patient or wiser or more creative, etc.? And which of your character strengths do you wish were stronger? Which are the weaker ones? And how would you like to strengthen them? So what are character strengths? Character strengths are personal qualities that help us to flourish and grow. And we can develop these all through our life. So you're not born with them, because if we think we're born with them or not with them, then what can we do about it? But they're there to develop through our lives. They're positive ways of thinking, talking, and acting that energize us and help us to enjoy better relationships. I really like this definition of the lady that wrote this book, Jennifer Fox Eads. And she says, character strengths are durable, that means strong, fundamental qualities that describe us at our best. I love that. Because quite often when we talk about character, oh, your character is shown when you're in the fiery furnace, when you're facing the lines, when something difficult is happening, that's when you show your character. But she says, no, it's what describes you when you're at your best, when you've had a good rest, when you're able to think straight, when you got lots of energy and you behave at your very best. That's who you are. That's what your character is. So our character strengths, we can grow all through our lives, and we grow and develop them. And the more we have, the more equipped we are for life, the more resilient we are. Each character strength is like an extra tool in our toolbox. And as we grow them, then we make them stronger, we know how to use them, and they bless us and other people. So I'll share all these slides with you if you give me your email. Peter understood something about character because in the verses in his second letter, he actually includes some things that are in the list of key character strengths today. And he says this is about character development. Make every effort to add to your faith goodness. To goodness, knowledge. To knowledge, self-control. To self-control, perseverance. To perseverance, godliness or spirituality. to godliness, mutual affection or kindness, and to mutual affection, love. Because if you possess these qualities in increasing measure, they will keep you from being ineffective and unproductive in your knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. So Peter understood this. He certainly grew his character, because we know the story of him, how he was this kind of wild fisherman, and then he grew in his love of Jesus. He grew in his courage too, after he denied Jesus, and then he soon became one of the leading apostles because he grew. Jesus looked at him in all of his mess and said, I can work with you, I can grow you, and he did. So if I were to ask you to make a list of God's character qualities, I wonder what you would put on it. We could start with some things we talked about today, about being patient, trustworthy, kind, creative. And yes, creativity is a character strength. Amazingly, a Jewish man called Martin Seligman did some research into character around the whole world. He wanted to find out which character strengths were valued in every culture. Like, what is the essence of character? If we can find the character strengths that every culture values, this is something that tells us something. And this are the 24 character strengths that are valued around the whole world in roughly alphabetical order. And they're amazing. I looked at these, and when I heard that they were in every culture, I thought, this is God's character written on our hearts. This is it. This describes God. He appreciates beauty. He's brave, cautious, creative, enthusiastic, fair, forgiving. He encourages us to be grateful, honest, hope, have a sense of humor, be kind, etc. These are all in God's character. And that's the only way we can have them in our character, is because they come from the heart of God. And I just think this is so amazing to see this. This really inspires me in developing character in children and others, because it describes the character of God. It's how we grow to be like him. So I'm going to look at these different ones and talk about how we can put them into our lives. And the children here, I want you to think about which Bible character might have shown this strength. And then we'll ask the grown-ups too. But you see first if you can remember. So first is appreciating beauty and being filled with wonder. And you might be surprised this is a character strength, but just imagine what Iceland would look like if God didn't appreciate beauty, what we would look like. And it's really important to help children appreciate beauty in the world around them, to look for wonder and to say, wow, look at the colors of those leaves, how they change in the autumn. To use nature as inspiration for art and crafts, to slow down and be filled with wonder at even snails and how they move along the ground. And ask your child, or your teenager, to show you a photograph, or your child, what was the most beautiful thing you saw in God's creation this week? And help them to notice these things. So, can you think of a Bible character who appreciated God's creation and beauty? Anybody? Just call it out. Think of a Bible character. David. Yes, I think David. Probably others too, but David wrote such beautiful psalms about it, and the Song of Solomon as well. Beautiful poems about nature. Then bravery. Bravery is courage to do hard things. So encourage them to have safe and gradual exploration, maybe do some sports activities or perform on the stage or do something at church in front of everyone. That takes some courage. But support children who are afraid, because I would have been very shy as a child, and I wouldn't think of myself as brave in the same way as my husband is brave. So my husband's hobby is paragliding, right? He jumps off mountains with a kite. Like, who does that? So I'm not that kind of brave. For me, bravery has been, not so much now, I've got used to it, speaking in public in front of people. And if someone had pushed me to be brave when I was young, I would have gone backwards. I would have been too afraid. So be very gentle. Sometimes children need a bit of encouragement, but be there to help them if they feel unsafe. And then ask your child, what's the bravest thing you did this week? What's the bravest thing you did? I did some brave things this week. I won't tell you what they were, but I think I got pushed to the edge of my bravery this week and realized I'm braver than I thought I was, but it wasn't paragliding. So who in the Bible was brave? I'm sure the children can tell me some brave people. Who was brave? David was brave. Yeah, he was brave as well. Yes. Can you think of other brave people? Paul. Esther. Samson. Daniel. Moses. Joshua. Even Rahab. She was brave. Ruth, yes. They were brave in their own different ways. So we can help our children find the character strengths in the Bible stories to show how people lived them out and encourage them as well. So caution. That's a nice balance to bravery. So teach principles of safety and risk assessment. Help them to make wise choices. Don't do stupid things and get hurt. I'll talk a little bit about that in the teenage presentation about one of my sons. This is especially important for preteens and teens because they cannot assess risk. Teenagers go through a brain process that I'll tell you about later when they cannot really make wise assessments on risk. And that's why they do things that we might think are really stupid or dangerous, because the brain disconnects the risk part from the bit that goes, that's a stupid idea. For a while, that bit doesn't work. And so they will do things without thinking. So who was cautious? This is a hard one, but I think the prophets, they're cautioning God's people. Take care, come back, do the right things, be safe, be loving, obey God. Creativity, and this isn't just about art, it's about solving problems in fresh ways. And creativity is one of the most highly prized qualities in organizations today because we face challenging problems and we need people with creative thinking to solve the world's biggest problems. So it's not just finger painting. You might want to, with your children, go and find anything in the house, bring it back and say, okay, let's think of 5 ways we could use this instead of what it is. 5 creative ways we could use an old boot, okay? Maybe you can fill it with water and put some flowers in it. Maybe you can use it as a bin. You could do different things with it, or a stone, or a bottle, or a brick, or a stick. So this helps children to think outside the box and be creative and come up with new ideas. So tell me someone in the Bible who was creative, who used something in a different way because they didn't have what they needed. Someone who used an ordinary object in a very unusual way. It's a story you all know really, really well, but we haven't thought about it as being creative. Moses' mother did, yes. She was very creative. Throw your baby into the river so she makes a boat for him so he won't sink. So she did. And also Mary, Jesus' mother, she doesn't have a cot, so she puts him in the animal trough. This is creative. And so helping our children to solve problems in creative ways is really a good character strength. Enthusiasm, joyfully and positively tackling tasks. Now, I thought this is a funny character strength, but then if you work with someone who's not enthusiastic, you realize how important this is. So when we're enthusiastic, it's contagious. Other people around us get enthusiastic too, and we are. So we can model enthusiasm to our children and think about how do we show enthusiasm. Can you think of someone in the Bible who was enthusiastic? He was super enthusiastic, always literally jumping into things without thinking because he was so keen. Well, I think Peter was enthusiastic. He sees Jesus and he dives into the water with all his clothes on and whatever. And And he showed a lot of enthusiasm and energy for things. Then there's fairness, teaching children the importance of being fair and treating others equally and with dignity. This is really important. This is what God does for us. He treats us all fairly. And even small children, you can talk to them about poverty and think, what can we do to help people around us who are poor? How can we help to rebalance society in small ways by giving our toys to a charity shop or to a refugee? And in the Bible, there was an issue about fairness in the New Testament, and they said, oh, these widows are not getting as much food as these widows. And some men were set up to help them take care of everybody equally. Forgiveness, this is really important. Teach children the process of forgiving others and being forgiving too. And we don't really teach our children how to forgive well. I have a whole other seminar on forgiveness called The 4 Places of Forgiveness, which you can find online. And I teach children about forgiveness by getting them to blow bubbles. So we will think about the things we've done wrong. We won't say them out loud, but then we will blow bubbles and imagine we're blowing our sins into these bubbles, and we close our eyes and we pray, please God, forgive us for the things that we have done wrong, that we have just blown into these bubbles. And when they open their eyes, the bubbles have disappeared forever. You can never take them off the carpet and put them back. You can't even find where they were. And it's a really clear picture for them to understand forgiveness. And that can be really helpful for them to see when it's been given to God, it disappears forever. The bubbles break on their own, usually. By the time they finish their prayer, they're all gone, or they will just disappear. Or you can break them, yeah. So we see stories of forgiveness in the Bible, the father of the prodigal son, Jacob and Esau, Joseph and his brothers. We can use those to help. Gratitude. Gratitude is also a character strength, and it's interesting because we saw gratitude in our healthy relationships yesterday, gratitude in our healthy emotions, and it's also a character strength to be thankful. And that's something all of us can do and do more of really easily. It's very easy for children to show gratitude. Help them to write an alphabet of all the things they're grateful for in a week. Write down every day in a journal what your family is thankful for. Make thank you cards to send. Or think of something you're thankful for beginning with the first letter of your name. So I want you all just now in your heads, think of something you're thankful for that begins with the first letter of your name, and just thank God. Thank you, God, for something. Kangaroos. Okay, that's a bit random, but that begins with a K. Thank you, God, for kindness. Can you think of people in the Bible who were grateful? Can you remember can you remember who was grateful in the Bible? Hannah, and the lepers, the leper who came back to thank Jesus, and Mary who poured perfume on his feet. So honesty is speaking the truth in love. I've also heard it defined as speaking the truth most of the time, because if we're honest, we speak the truth most of the time. So reward honesty, as I mentioned before, in discipline. Be careful not to punish honesty and encourage lying, and teach and live the importance of financial honesty, rather than telling your children how you manipulate your taxes or try to get round something that is important to pay. Let them see you be honest. Return the extra change in the shop or whatever. So they understand the importance of honesty as a value in their lives. So can you think of people in the Bible who were honest? Zacchaeus, yes. That's a good one. I guess the prophets were honest as well. So hope. Ask children what their hopes are and encourage them to have things to look forward to. And ask them, what are you looking forward to most at the moment? Or how can we make Sabbath a day that fills you with joy, that you look forward to the whole week? We want you to have that good experience. So many people in the Bible had hope, Simeon had hope that he would see the Messiah baby, and he did. And we all have hope. We have this hope, this great hope. Humor is important. So have a humor, laughter moment with your children every day. I think there's a typo there. Humor actually helps your brains to open up to learn something new, as we mentioned yesterday, and find funny things to share with each other. I love to watch videos of funny animals because they also can be filled with wonder at the funny animal as well as the humor. And ask, what made you laugh the most this week? I wonder what made you laugh. I think they tell us that children laugh like 200 times a day and adults laugh like 5 or something dismal like that. But can you think of someone in the Bible who had a sense of humor? Where do you find some of the funny verses in the Bible? In Proverbs. Have you read some of the Proverbs? Some of them are just so funny. It's better to live on the roof of your house than inside with a nagging wife. And clearly Solomon knew a few things about wives. So I think Solomon had a sense of humor when he was writing the Proverbs. Actually, some of Jesus' parables are funny in the context of his time. He also used humor. And I think God has a sense of humor because he made some animals so funny that we're going to laugh at them. Like the creativity to create some animals like elephants with a long nose, giraffes, kangaroos with pockets for their babies. Like, that's really quite funny. Sometimes I wish we had pockets for our babies. That would be nice. Kindness. So kindness is a really important character strength. Encourage kindness, especially after a conflict or a hurt. And do a kindness project for your community. Get your children to do something for the community. In one classroom, they had a button jar, and if anyone was kind in the classroom, a child could come and put a button in the button jar. And when the button jar was full of kindness, then the class had a special treat. You can do that in your house too. Maybe get a small jar. And then when it encourages children to be kind, and then to put a button in the jar, and then they have a lovely reward. So ask your children, what's the kindest thing someone did for you this week? Or the kindest thing you did for somebody? And can you think of people in the Bible who were kind? Can you name someone kind? Ruth was very kind. That was amazing, yes. Mm-hmm. The little boy who gave up his lunch to Jesus, he was kind. Imagine what that felt like afterwards. Jesus was kind. There's many people in the Bible who were just simply kind, and it made a big difference. Dorcas was kind. Interestingly, if you look at some people who were kind, Dorcas, Mary and Martha, the widow of Zarephath, who fed Elijah, and the Shunammite woman who made a house for Elisha, they were kind women. Each one of them had a resurrection. Wow. Dorcas got raised from the dead. Lazarus got raised from the dead. And then the sons of the widow of Zarephath and the Shunammite woman were also raised from the dead, which says something, I think, about how God sees kindness. So leadership, provide chances for your children and young people to develop leadership skills and model good leadership as parents. And we can think of good leaders in the Bible. Most of them weren't good leaders, but Moses was a good leader, I guess. David had his moments. Jesus is a good leader. Paul, there's good leaders we can look up to there. Love. How do you like to be loved? In all these different ways. And ask your children, how do you like to be loved? What do I do that shows love for you? And how can we show more love in this family in different ways? So we would do loving things in our family. We made these paper hearts that says love was here. And we would do something kind in our family, the children and us, and we would leave the paper heart there. So they knew someone had done something loving. And when you got a paper heart, you had to do something loving for someone else in the family. And this nurtured love in the family. Love of learning, helping children to understand how to learn best, to understand what helps them to learn. And and say to them, what do you enjoy learning about? What do you want to learn more about? And follow them on their journey of discovery. One of our children loved birds, and we followed his interest in birds, even getting up really early in the morning to hear the dawn chorus in the English woodlands at really ridiculous time, like 4 or 5 in the morning. And we learned so much from following our children's interests into different areas that we would not have naturally chosen ourselves. Modesty, humility. Read stories about humility versus pride. What does humility look like? It's not putting yourself down. It's choosing to come down to lift others up, but you're not put down. You are strong enough to serve others without feeling bad about it. Mm-hmm. Perseverance. Set some perseverance activities with your children, like doing a complex jigsaw or building a complex Lego set, because this helps them to persevere. Reward their effort more than their achievement. Encourage them to learn new skills. And think about, when have you really persevered at something? When have you had to work really hard? What was the result of that? And tell your children your stories of perseverance. There's many people in the Bible who persevered. Noah, 120 years preaching. Moses persevered. Abraham. These great patriarchs persevered. Now, self-control. Encouraging children to delay their gratification. Wait for what they really want, not just go and grab the biggest piece. Play games that need patience, find motor control to give them self-control. Help them to manage their anger and self-calming skills so they don't get angry. Encourage them to let others go first. When children want something, I really want this, I really want it so badly, say, okay, let's write that on the calendar in a month's time. If you still want that so badly in a month's time, we will talk about it. But in the meantime, if there's something else you want, we rub this one out, and in a month's time, we put the next thing you like. And it helps them to see that I might want this really badly now, but in a month's time, that's not the most important thing. So helping them to delay their gratification in that way is helpful for them and for you. Sociability, encouraging them to include people in their friendship groups, reduce bullying, teach them good friendship skills, how to listen to each other, how to help each other, model that in the family, even teach them conflict resolution skills, and encourage them to look out for others and help them, especially those who might have a disability or be struggling or be new. How do they care for one another? And people in the Bible that had social skills were Abigail. She had amazing social skills. Naomi and Ruth, even Abraham and Paul, they were concerned about relationships. Spirituality is an important character strength. We know that it is, but actually every culture in the world values spirituality. Imagine that. It's being aware of the presence of God, growing in relationship with Him, being filled with wonder, praying, worshipping, learning, having beliefs that inspire values and purpose, showing respect for others as made in the image of God. And here we have David was spiritual, Moses, Mary, Bethany, Paul, Peter, John, etc. They were all deeply spiritual. Teamwork. So one of the qualities is sports activities, non-competitive games where people can work together, cooking together as a family, that's fun, camping, doing something where we all work together. And you can use this if your home looks a bit messy on Friday night or Thursday night when you're preparing for Sabbath. Say, if we can all work together to tidy up this mess in 5 minutes, we'll have an ice cream or we'll do something fun or we'll whatever. So work together as a family. Maybe work together as a family, bending your bodies to make the shape of an animal together. Say, okay, let's make an elephant together. And you all gather together and make the elephant. Who's going to be the trunk and who are the legs? And that can be a fun way to connect as a family, just trying to make something together, or building a Lego project together, doing something kind together. When we do things together, we learn how to cooperate and value each other. And finally, wisdom. Learn about wise people, explore the wise sayings in your culture, which are different to other cultures. Help children know when they've made a wise choice. That was so wise. Tell them why it was wise and help them to understand that. And maybe read some of the Proverbs because they're full of wisdom too. So character strengths are important because they help us to cope with life's difficulties. It's like having a toolbox. The more character strengths you have, the more tools you have to fix things around you. You know what that's like. If you haven't got much of a toolbox, then you're stuck. I went to help somebody build some IKEA furniture, and she just moved into our country. She had no tools. I'm used to my husband having this massive toolbox, and she didn't have one certain screwdriver that everybody has because she just moved. And it was really hard to put the furniture together without this one screwdriver we needed, because these tools are really important. So they help us to be resilient. If something bad happens, we can manage it better because we have more tools to help us. And we bounce back because these things strengthen us. It's like every character strength is like another stick bound together, and the more sticks bound together, the harder it is to break. So what are your character strengths? Think about the list and think, what are your character strengths? And next to the character strengths you've written about yourself, name a time when you used that strength. So you have a specific example. When were you kind? When were you patient? When were you wise? And write that down. Notice it. And remember a time when someone noticed one of your character strengths. When I was a child, I made something in school. It was probably horribly messy, but someone told me, wow, that's really creative, Karen. And I said, what does creative mean? And they said, well, it means you do something different to everybody else and you try to make it beautiful. I thought, oh, I really like that. I want to be creative. So I would try and make things creative, always do something a bit different to everybody else in my class. That must have been a pain for my teacher. And when I started to be a writer, I was quite young when I really liked to write. I tried to write creatively. And I worked on that over the years. And now I've written about 6 books about creativity and spirituality. And I might never have known I was creative unless someone had named it when I was a child once. And I felt encouraged to develop that. And it changed my life. I was only about 6. But it shows the power of spotting a child doing something well. That was creative, that was kind, that was wise, that was good teamwork. And helping them to feel, wow, I want to hear that again. I want to be that kind person because that sounded amazing. So be aware of different character strengths. Remember the list. And so if you put your name and you get the PowerPoint of this, you'll have the slide with all of the different character strengths on it. We need to know that list because then we can spot our children doing one of those things. And maybe put the list inside your kitchen door or on your fridge with a magnet so that you all know what character strengths look like and you can spot each other doing them. Tell each other when you go to bed at night, you did this character, you did this well. You showed kindness. And tell each other, your spouses, your children, I saw you doing that today and I was proud of you. That was a character strength. So teach about character strengths. Use your Bible characters and stories to teach about them. You can use it to help you shape your worships together and help children to think about the characters who had these qualities and how they used them and the positive difference it made to their lives. That inspires them. And you can also inspire character by looking at characters today, contemporary people who show good character strengths. Because the Bible is a long way away, but people who lived in the last century who were inspiring, you can read their stories. There's often small books for children on people with great character to encourage them. Point out character strengths in the news if you hear a story about a good thing. Not that there's many of those out there, but if someone does something good and they show character in the news, hey, this person here, that was showing courage. I don't know whether you heard recently, last week, a young boy swam a really long time, hours and hours in Australia. They'd got blown out to sea on some paddle boards, and his family were all out at sea. And they chose him. He was like 13, I think, because he was the strongest swimmer. And he swam for hours against the current till he got to land to get help. And they had no idea if they'd ever see him again, but they knew he was his only chance. So tell that story to your kids. That was courageous. And they called him a hero. He says, I'm not a hero. Like, what else would you do? You have to save your family. I think he was also a Christian. And he was praying the whole way and singing songs, it said. That's an amazing story to tell your kids. So work on your character strengths together as a family. Maybe make posters about them. Have a week where you focus on one of the character strengths and do activities. Say patience. Let's do things this week that are going to build patience. Let's spot each other being patient and build patience. Tell them when they're doing great and tell them they made a good choice. That's so important. And notice the people in their storybooks, even in their movies, different characters will show different character strengths. Help them to see that. Say, who was the bravest person in this story? What helped them to be brave? Who was the kindest person? What helped them? Who was the most creative person? What did they do? And this helps them to identify the stories and strengthen them. So here's this list again of the character strengths. You can, if you haven't got it already, snap this, because this will help you to notice when you and others are doing these things, and you can nurture and encourage each other on the journey. So I want you to think, what one thing are you going to do this week to nurture your character? If you look at all that list, which one do you want to nurture? How will you nurture a child's character strength, a child around you, your grandchild, your own child? A child in your class, the child down the street. What can you do to help them? Ellen White says this, and it's so inspiring. She says, every act of life, however unimportant, however tiny, has an influence in forming the character. She says, a good character is more precious than worldly possessions, and the work of forming it, the work of the parents, the teachers, the grandparents, is the noblest work in which we can engage. Imagine that. It's the most beautiful thing we do when we help to shape a character. And it might be just saying to me as a child, that was creative, because that changed the course of my life. I might not even be here today if someone hadn't said that. And so we can see that just by spotting them, telling them, it's so powerful when people spot us doing something well and say, that was amazing, that was a good choice, you are this. And so be aware of that. So here are some resources. I think for me, the book that I took a lot of this from was Celebrating Strengths by Jennifer Fox Eads. I read that book and I kind of adapted it into this seminar. There's lots of material on the internet, but the bottom one, viacharacter.org, is based on this research. And you can go there. In 10 minutes, you can fill out a questionnaire, and it will tell you your character strengths in order from the strongest to the weakest. Doesn't mean to say that your weakest one is rubbish, but it will, it's just one that isn't so important in your life right now. And they're things you can build on. So there on that website, viacharacter.org, there's lots of resources to help you with different things to do with character. They used to be on Let It Ripple, but Let It Ripple has rippled and it's not the same as it was. But there's lots of material now, because even people who are not Christians are interested in developing character, because they realize it's important for your mental health, your physical health, your relationships, your well-being. Those who have strong characters are more, and with these good character strengths, are more likely to be a blessing in the world and bless others. And when we see that all these character strengths are God's character in our lives, then the more of these character strengths we have and show to others, the more we are witnessing to God's character as well. So I hope that was helpful and inspiring. I found it so exciting to discover this research. I find that good research, when I read really good research, it always points to God and his way and his design in the world, because we know that's what's behind everything. And this research on character is truly inspiring. So thank you. It's time for a break now. We finished at exactly 12 o'clock. And if you have any questions, come in and let me know. Thank you. develop your child's character, the less issues you'll have with their behavior too. It helps them to manage their behavior better, the more character strengths they have. So if you want to add your email to this list, then I will send you some extra handouts and resources and the PowerPoint PDF of yesterday and today. So the resources on this table, there's